Let's talk about scaling. Some of you lean in when you hear that word, and some of you turn your cheek. And I get it, that term is overplayed, but stay with me because today we're going to talk about what it actually means as we kick off a short series built around the book, The Science of Scaling by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. In this series, we'll deliver the most important points for law firm owners who want to grow in a healthy, profitable, and impactful way. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work. This is the work that creates velocity. Hello, and welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. This episode kicks off a brand new series. We are going to work through The Science of Scaling, a book by Dr. Ben Hardy, and connect his concepts directly to running and growing your law firm. I went to a workshop with Dr. Hardy a few months back, and the way he taught this was so refreshing because it reaffirmed the principles of truth and clarity that I've built my work around. I sat through that workshop thinking, I can't not share this with my listeners, viewers, and of course, my clients. So I'm bringing you the concepts from this book broken down in plain language with examples for different stages of a law firm's growth. And then prompts to take it from theory into action in your own world. By the end of this series, you'll not only understand what true scaling is, you'll know how to recognize when you're ready for it and how to do it in a way that's strategic, sustainable, and deeply aligned with the vision for your firm. Some of you hear the word scaling and immediately tune out. It feels repulsive, like a slick marketing buzzword, something that gurus throw around to sell their programs. And I get it. The way that word gets tossed around today feels hollow. And I've even shied away from using that word on behalf of Velocity Work because it's been used by so many bro marketers and other consultancies out there across all industries that don't share the same values I do, don't have the same philosophy I do, and the same values that we're also connected to here. It just didn't feel aligned to use the same language that they use, the ones selling quick fixes, the flashy tactics, the one-size-fits-all advice. And these may be well-meaning people, but these are the people who promise you your dreams and explosive growth without any real focus on the fundamentals of running a healthy business. It's the same reason that when 10X is Easier Than 2X came out, that's a book by Ben Hardy he wrote with Dan Sullivan a few years ago, I didn't rush to read it. And I know I don't judge a book by its cover, but even Hardy states that this book, The Science of Scaling, hits on essential things that 10X is Easier Than 2X didn't include. And I appreciate that deeply because I understand the thinking behind scaling. And I don't have a problem with the core idea. The problem is how it's often presented, how it's taught. Hypey, irresponsible, and pushed on business owners, maybe just dangled in front of business owners who don't even have their hands wrapped around the fundamentals of business. And that is a recipe for disaster. Because here's the truth. If you don't know your business inside and out, your numbers, your production model, your inefficiencies, the facts, not feelings, why things are the way they are, why you're getting the results you're getting with your firm, you cannot plan strategically. Anyone can make a plan, but without that level of understanding, your plan is either small, safe, linear steps that inch you forward, but never really change your reality, or a big, flashy 10X plan that sounds exciting, but it's built on shaky ground. And that's why I call it hype, not because thinking big is bad, but because it's dangerous to attach yourself to that without first understanding the current state of your business. The numbers tell a story. And if you don't know that story, you'll make the wrong calls about scaling. And when you do know the story, when you understand what's under the hood, then you can make smart, calculated, informed decisions that line you up with bigger, better quality goals, the kind that transform your firm into what you want. And that's what this series is about. Scaling the right way, grounded in a deep understanding of the business you own. So you can grow without the unnecessary pain, without wasting years fixing avoidable mistakes, and without building a firm that you secretly resent. We're talking about scaling in a way that gives you freedom, profitability, and a business you are proud to run. In this book, Ben Hardy agrees that the term scaling has been bastardized. The original meaning has been watered down and misused. And here's what scaling really means. Scaling is when you increase results without a proportional increase in effort. Let's consider this within different stages of a law firm. When it's just you, the scaling mindset here might mean automating client onboarding so you can stop spending hours on repetitive admin, freeing you to focus on legal work and growth activities that actually move the business forward. Growth without a scaling mindset is you saying yes to more cases and just going to work harder, right? But without automation, every new client means more repetitive admin on top of your legal work. And so your nights get later and your weekends disappear, and every new client feels like it's adding weight to your shoulders instead of building a healthier business. Now, when there's a small team, that could be paralegals, legal assistants, maybe another attorney, for sure admin, scaling here might mean setting crystal clear expectations for every role, documenting workflows and building systems so your team can operate without you constantly stepping in. Now, growth without scaling at this stage means you would hire more people, you would pile on more cases, but without role clarity or systems, and work gets duplicated, mistakes increase, you're pulled into putting out fires all day. So you've got more help, but you're still the bottleneck. If you're a firm that is the owner mostly out of production, scaling here might mean creating real-time reporting dashboards, strengthening your leadership team, building systems for accountability so you can focus on strategy instead of micromanaging. And at this stage, growth without a scaling mindset, you expand your client base and your team size, but without the right leadership in place or the key numbers that are driven by other people in your firm. True responsibility hasn't been transferred well for scaling. So you've stepped out of production, but you are still in operational quicksand because no one truly owns outcomes but you. Bottom line, scaling is about freedom, profitability, and sustainability. You can grow without a scaling mindset, but you'll grow yourself into exhaustion. Now, here's why scaling should be your friend and not a term that you roll your eyes at. Number one, freedom from the grind. Scaling is the only way you can serve more clients without your personal hours exploding. Two, better margins and more profit. If every bit of growth requires equal increases in payroll and overhead, your margins never improve. But when you scale strategically, you create more profit from each new dollar earned, which means more freedom, more financial stability, and more resources to invest in the firm that you want to build. Three, a stronger, more resilient team. Scaling forces you to build systems and cross-train so no single person, including you, is the bottleneck. Four, consistent client experience. Scaling bakes quality into the process so every client gets your best no matter how busy you are. And five, future-proofing your firm. If you ever want to sell, step back, or pass the firm on, the value is in how well it runs without you. Scaling is the bridge between more revenue and a better life. Without it, growth just means more weight on your shoulders. Tony Robbins wrote the foreword of the book, and he makes some points worth conveying here. He says, scaling is strategic and intentional. Growth can be chaotic and reactive. The next thing he says, amateurs try to do more of the same. Pros redesign the game they're playing. And that lands differently when you think about it in the context of a law firm. When you grow reactively, you hire in a hurry, you take on whatever cases come your way, you put out fires instead of building systems, and you might see your numbers go up, but you also end up chained to your business. Scaling, on the other hand, is about building capacity for the future. It's about making intentional moves now for the firm that you want in 3 to 5 years. Another point he makes, you don't scale by just doing more of what you're already doing. That's the amateur way of doing things, right? And that's growth. And it will eventually burn you out. Scaling requires you to redesign the game you're playing so that you can achieve more with less stress, less chaos, and more freedom. And that's exactly what this series is about. Scaling the right way, grounded in a deep understanding of the business you own. Early in this book, Hardy quotes Elon Musk. And no matter your position on him, just take the nugget of truth here. Most people optimize something that shouldn't even exist. That hit me when I was in his workshop a couple months ago. And that's exactly what most business owners are doing. And it's why they can't scale. They're improving systems, processes, or services that have no business being there in the first place. And they also tend to build the business around the people that they have instead of designing the right structure that the business needs and then plugging the right people into it. But they can't see any of that because they're not aligned with a clear goal. And this is where we're going to start to get into some of the key concepts from the book. Hardy makes his point. A goal isn't just something to hit. The right kind of goal is a filter, one that clears out noise. It brings into focus what matters the most so that you can prioritize the parts of your business that can actually scale. So again, owners are unable to make the best calls for their firms because they don't have a clear goal. There's no filter in place to help them distinguish what's essential from what is just noise. And so they stay in a lane that will not deliver them to where they want to be. And they are optimizing what should not exist. Hardy stresses the importance of goals. Goals so big that they feel ridiculous and timelines so short that they feel absurd. And he chooses to use the term impossible goal after he studied an article that was written by a researcher from Duke's management department. The article clearly defined stretch goals as an organizational goal with an objective probability of attainment that may be unknown, but is seemingly impossible given current capabilities, like current practices, skills, knowledge. And from this definition, Hardy decided to use impossible goal as a replacement for stretch goal. Here is what the research found. When leaders set a goal that feels impossible, it forces a radical shift in how they think, how they plan, and how they operate. And when you set an impossible goal, two things happen fast. The first, you get brutally honest. You see that most of what you're doing is a distraction. It's a sunk cost you've been protecting. And you very well may realize that you haven't been holding yourself accountable to what you say you want. The second thing it does is that you start spotting better paths, new ideas, new people, new opportunities that you wouldn't have noticed before without that impossible goal. When you commit to a goal that feels impossible right now, you quickly realize you've been optimizing things that should not exist. And that can be humbling, but it's also the key to making your business simpler, stronger, able to scale. An impossible goal changes what you pay attention to. So you start locking in on the right things and you start tuning out the noise. Hardy's framework for fixing this comes down to three elements. This is what he calls his scaling framework. It's the frame, the floor, and the focus. The frame is how you see your business and your opportunities. It is shaped by your goal. The floor is the line that you draw for what you don't do. It's the standards you refuse to lower. And then focus is what you go after with everything you've got. The paths, the projects, the partners that's going to make this goal become real. So if you want to scale, an impossible goal is where you start. It becomes your lens for every decision. And yes, it can be uncomfortable because it raises your standards and it makes you draw lines in the sand and it forces you to drop what's common, what's convenient, what's good enough. But here's the truth. You cannot scale complexity. He talks about that deeply in this book, and that's probably a concept you've heard before. You can't scale noise, and you can't scale if you're afraid to define yourself as a firm and commit. When you raise your frame high enough with a goal so big it demands transformation, you will filter your business more honestly than you ever have. And when you do, the path gets clearer and your confidence grows, and you finally start building something that can grow to its full potential. That's what strategic growth is really about. Not just working harder, but evolving how you think, evolving how you plan and how you lead. Because growth happens in stages and each one demands something new from you. Now, each stage of growth has unique constraints. And to move up, you have to upgrade your thinking. Upgrade your systems and your people. Stage 1, owner-heavy production. Stage 2, small team, basic systems. Stage 3, leadership layers, strong processes, data-driven management. And then stage 4, the firm runs without you. Now, the danger, and I see this a lot, is trying to run on stage 3. A lot of people are focused on stage 3, but they have stage 1 habits and stage 1 thinking. That's the trap. You are aiming higher, but you are still operating with the same mindset, the same systems, and the same standards that got you here. And that might work for a little while, but eventually it breaks because scaling isn't just more of the same. It requires a completely different way of thinking. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between linear growth and strategic scaling. Linear growth is about stacking more on top of what you're already doing. It's small, incremental improvements. Work harder, work longer, squeeze a little more efficiency out of the same setup. But strategic scaling is about redesigning the game you're playing. It means eliminating what doesn't belong, creating capacity, and building for the firm you want in 3 to 5 years, not just for today's workload. Most law firm owners think too conservatively. They're risk averse. If they could see the bigger picture, they would see that actually thinking small is the bigger risk. They aim for what's realistic, not what they actually want. And they convince themselves that the bigger vision will take too long or that the bigger vision is impossible for them. But the research says otherwise. And Hardy points to the research, and the research shows that people consistently underestimate what's possible in a 3 to 5 year window. And here's the key. The way that you phrase a goal changes everything about how you approach it. So when you call something a realistic goal, you tend to keep doing what you're already doing, maybe with a few tweaks. You're not forced to think differently. But when you call it an impossible goal, you are telling your brain, the way I'm operating today will not get me there. And that phrasing forces you to challenge your own assumptions and eliminate what doesn't belong to create capacity for a much bigger future. Hardy states that once you've set your impossible goal, it can then be worked through his frame, floor, focus model that he presents in the book. So, frame. This is essentially your impossible goal. It's the lens for every decision. If you want a $5 million firm with you out of the daily production, that's your frame. And anything that doesn't move you there is noise. The floor is the floor. It is your new minimum standard. It's the consistent behavior or input that you commit to, the baseline activity that drives better results over time. And the floor removes essentially the things that you've been tolerating. You define the standards and actions that lead you to the firm that you want, and you don't drop below that standard again. The focus is the single priority now that moves you toward the frame, and it raises the floor. And for a law firm, that might be hiring an intake director, building a referral pipeline, automating a core process. When we lead strategic planning retreats, we work with clients to constrain down to just a few things that they're going to focus on over the next 90 days that will have the biggest impact on getting them to where they want to be. And here's the truth, going back to the point about it feeling risky to set an impossible goal. When you build for comfort today, it rarely leads you to the future comfort. You end up with more stress, more complexity, and definitely less freedom. Strategic scaling feels risky because you're letting go of things that work right now, but staying in linear growth mode, adding more on top of the foundation, it's just going to keep you stuck. It's exhausting, and you're no closer to the firm that you truly want. In the next episode, we're breaking down the biggest mistakes law firm owners make when setting goals and how to avoid them so that you set targets that actually move your firm forward. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.